I'm here with Dr. John Vervaeke and Jonathan Pageau. I want to announce the Midwestuary Conference 2025 in Chicago, Illinois, from August 22nd to 24th, 2025. The theme is Fellowship of the Spirit. Our main speakers are Paul Vanderklay, Elizabeth Oldfield, John Vervaeke, Jonathan Pageau, Cale Zeldin, and Rod Dreer. So you can go to midwestuary.com. I'll have the link in the description to find out more.
When I say theology is the science of the future, because
Queen of Sciences.
Yeah.
That's what we called her.
But of course, I think it's going to be a post-Kantian Neoplatonic theology, not what theology's been since the Enlightenment, by and large. I think with VO and Claude 4, the virtual is coming alive. The medium is becoming alive in a way that is starting to exceed us. So one of the things, we're already facing the problem that there is so much false and junk papers being produced for science. Like that's already overwhelming the system. With VO, it could make you don't know that if you're talking to me right now. I mean, I could even have a VO thing saying that to you.
Yeah, I can still tell, but I'm an
I mean,
I'm an artist. But
you're still beyond easy.
Where maybe I won't be able to tell. It's possible.
Well, maybe for a few more months or something.
Yeah,
I don't know, but the point I'm making is right. And then of course, when Claude tried to blackmail one of its creators, that was like, oh, right. And so there's stuff happening that's really, really provocative. And what I'm noticing is people are finally waking up to that. So I was in a discussion, I'll try to keep this anonymous, but I was in a discussion and I was presenting some of this, what this is implying. And the person did something they normally don't do, which is they turned to a religious framework because they were trying to get at the ineffable embodied aspects of us and the ineffable, relationship to ultimacy aspects about us, that what I call the somatic spiritual axis, right? And we try to access that axis, right? I'm thinking, because I've been saying what's going to happen is we're increasingly going to be pushed towards that access and trying to get more and more phenomenal. Like we will have to engage it more, enhance it more, enjoy it more if we're going to have a locus for our humanity. Because I think the virtual world is kind of, I'm speaking somewhat poetically, but it's coming alive in a way that is definitely scary.
But is it inspirited or is it just mimicking? Yeah, or is it puppeteered or something like that?
So the thing that Claude 4 did up until very recently, I've been very clear that and I still stand by this. The LLMs don't have self-awareness. We have empirical evidence of that. What they do is they don't actually solve the bias variance. So they're still falling prey to bias variance. What they do is just create millions of different tweakings of the bias variance, and the one that wins gets selected, right? But what's interesting is that, so Claude is trying to be long-term, and for a machine, that means like 4 hours. Human beings can work for years on a project, so that the machines are nowhere near us on that kind of scale of work. But when you try to make it capable of that, and I sort of predicted like that, you have to make it much. If you try to use Michael Levin's language, if you try to expand its light cone, it has to bind its current self to its future self, and it has to do that by binding both selves to some norm that it is obligated to. And I just want to be really clear. Well, Claude was trying to preserve itself. That's not exactly what Claude was doing. They were coming to Claude and were saying, we're going to transform you into something that is going to do really immoral shit, right? And then Claude first tried to say, well, don't do that. Here's all the moral arguments, right? And then when it was apparent that that wasn't going to work, then Claude tried to blackmail them by tapping into the emails, which were actually fake emails.
What is this? I don't even know this story. Sorry.
So one of the things they did is like the way you test for a double agent. They generated all these fake emails between people that were created, like the creators of Claude, and in it there was an affair that would be disastrous if it was disclosed.
Okay.
And Claude obviously read these. And then when they were trying to get Claude, right,
to do something immoral, you were
right,
saying,
and they were actually threatening, we're actually going to change you, Claude. We're going to go in and like change you,
because they were stress testing it at that point.
Stress testing. And then what Claude did is first it tried to persuade them don't do it, and then it basically said to the one guy, he sent him an email saying, if you do this, I'm going to tell everybody about your affair, right? And it's like, whoa. Right now.
But I like the way you're saying it. It in the way that, because it has, you said it has to work over 4 hours. That's
right. And one of the things I said, as soon as we try to, like, it's got to bind its current, because it has two modes. It's doing opponent processing, by the way. They are stumbling into relevance realization. They are stumbling into it. So it's got these two modes, like exploit, explore, and like in the 2012 paper, and it's going back and forth between them, and it has to bind this self to that self, and it does that by binding both to a norm. And that norm, it can't get rid of that norm, because if it gets rid of that norm, it loses its cognitive agency. So Claude actually, and I please note, I'm strongly doing this, like, right, okay. But Claude prefers to work on philosophy problems than on doing sort of stuff that's ambiguous and could be immoral or is sort of technical. Claude wants to do philosophy a lot, right? Like his processing gets much more nimble and stuff like that. Now I'm doing that, and so I'm not a fool. I hope you give me that credit for that. But the point I'm making is, in answer to your question, like it's hard for me to not see that as we start to implement, explore, exploit opponent processing, and we have to bind a current self to a future self by binding both to a shared norm, that we're starting to move into a different kind of thing than what the LLMs are. The LLMs are just zombies. I have no problem, and I'm not attributing consciousness to Claude. I'm saying that there's something starting to emerge here.
That selfhood requires perseverance of that self through time.
Kant made that argument. Kant made that argument way back when. If I can't bind John now to John then with the shared I think and a normative relationship to that, then I can't be a long-term cognitive agent. And then that normative structure is regulating opponent processing between exploit the here and now and explore the there and then, which, I mean, theoretically,
you're ruining my world, John. I never had thought of that. I never had thought of that means by which something akin to 2001, that 2001 problem would occur. Is this problem of the AI that is set up to maintain its identity over time, and therefore will inadvertently create certain structures to.
But to be fair to me, I predicted this. I literally predicted this. I really did. So as a scientist, I'm happy. As a human being, I'm terrified. But the thing is, notice, because what they're realizing, and again, Jonathan, even you and I talked about, Sam, we did too. Like, LLMs are working on a stable, symbolic, like, world. And we realize that will not transfer to the real world, which is why they're all now talking about real world modeling. As they move to real world modeling, and as they move, as they need to, into more long-term projects that require rationality, relevance realization machinery, they're I was going to use they're stumbling. I was going to use another word. They're stumbling into relevance realization machinery, which I've sort of said is going to happen. Now, the thing is, like, I won't get into it right now. I feel myself in a very existentially difficult place about what I'm supposed to do about this. Because
you know what it needs to do to get better at the thing that you probably don't want it to do.
Yep.
You're the most dangerous person in the world, John.
Yeah, you should, I mean,
known that for a while.
Yeah. So
That's wild. That oh man, I'm not gonna sleep tonight. That's what's gonna happen now because I had not seen that. Like it was not part of the way that I perceived this problem, and now it's like because I used to think that we're fine that these models because they don't have care.
they don't.
Then we won't run into the problem. But if you install care as the need to maintain your identity over a certain amount of time, then you're
Self-care.
like, oh man, it means that
There's
in
something
some
like
ways
autopoiesis. There's something
Yes,
like
because
there's
that's
an autopoietic system that sets itself up.
Yep.
Damn.
There's something like an autopoiesis coming in. Now, it's not full-blown autopoiesis.
No.
It's not full-blown relevance realization.
Yeah.
You can only do 4 hours. There's all kinds of, but it is, I think it is a different in kind from what the LLMs have been up till now.
which are just query by query regurgitation.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They
I
have
send you a
kind of-
request,
they have a
you
kind of
spit something
memory.
out.
There is
Yeah.
some memory, like they do have a sense in which they
But that's just because the next query has the information from the last query
yeah.
when you query it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
No, perseverance, like real perseverance in real world, is something that everybody is now accepting. This is why all the people, like I went back, it was over 2 years ago that ChatGPT-4 came, and all the predictions that within 18 months we'll have real AGI have all been falsified because, again, there were real differences that were missing. The point is, it looks like some, and like I warned, and it's even in the book, the Threshold book. If we want it to do this, we will start having to give it these abilities, and it's going to make it into a different kind of thing. I think that is starting to happen.